I don't walk around my house going, I wonder what I sound like as Harrison Ford. I mean, that's my kung fu. And I looked at him and I said, you can't do it. There's no way you should do that. There's no way, because what are you gonna do? Indy looks at his dad and he said, this is an obsession, Dad. I never understood it. And to me, that was the foundational theme of the entire character in our story, is like, yes, you have. You do understand obsession because you are obsessed.
I've had run-ins with these guys before. Trust me, it ain't a walk in the park.
Okay, then. Let's see if you can keep up.
What do you mean if I can keep up?
Well, Troy, lovely to meet you.
You as well.
And may I compliment you on your hat?
You
Again,
may indeed.
Rory.
I will absolutely take a compliment with this old thing. Yeah.
I was wondering, kind of to start at the beginning on this project, how did it first kind of cross your desk? How did you first hear it was happening?
So oddly enough, in November of 2020, a friend of mine came to me, Travis Willingham, and he said, hey, I got this audition for Indiana Jones. And I looked at him and I said, you can't do it. There's no way you should do that. There's no way, because what are you gonna do? Are you gonna be Harrison Ford? Nobody could do that. And are we gonna do something different? And then, as irony would have it, a director that I'd never worked with before, Tom Keegan, reached out to me and said, hey, I like you for this role. And I said, okay, I have one question. Do they want Harrison Ford? And he said, we want 1981 Harrison Ford. And I said, great. I'm going to give you two names. And one of these two people are going to solve your problem. And Tom Keegan said, okay, thank you for that. I like you for this role. And I said, tell you what, man, I'll put myself on tape. If you think it's good, send it on. But if it's not, do us both a favor and keep this between the two of us. And he liked what I did, and apparently so did Machine Games and everyone at Bethesda. So that's what put me on the adventure.
Amazing. And did you have like a Harrison Ford voice in your back pocket, or something you had to come up to for that?
No, oddly enough, and believe it or not, I don't walk around my house going, I wonder what I sound like as Harrison Ford. To me, the only advantage that I had, I think, is that this is my first movie that I saw in the theater. And I was 5 years old, way too young to see this movie, I feel. And it was the first time that I saw a superhero that didn't wear a cape, that used his brain more than he used his fists, and made me realize that someone who loved history, someone who loved being a normal guy, could also have extraordinary adventures. And so I never thought that 40 years later, I would be standing on a stage with an incredible cast, with an incredible crew, telling an incredible story.
Amazing. And do you have a favorite out of the films?
Of course I have a favorite.
Will you reveal?
Todd Howard and I like to go back and forth, and everybody kind of, rates them differently. To me, Raiders it left such an indelible mark on me. I love the story of Last Crusade. The story of a father and son reconciling means a lot to me, and you get to see a lot of the humanity in Indy. But to be quite honest with you, and I feel like I'm a bit biased, I love our story. Our story, to me, slots in right next with all of the other movies. And we get to see a side of Indiana Jones that we've never seen before. And that was a big challenge, is to not only make it feel as authentic as it could with the original source material, but also feel refreshing and new and something that we haven't seen before. And that's what we set to work to do every day.
Amazing. And with the voice, it is so uncanny. How did you, it's probably a weird, difficult thing to describe, but how did you kind of find that voice? Did you have phrases and things that helped you get into it, or?
Yeah, there's a few, iconic phrases. Matter of fact, there was some that Machine Games and Bethesda had pulled that was like, here's our reference lines. And so it's funny, I've seen these movies so many times, but then I'm watching it through a different lens now. I'm watching it through a very critical one of listening to some of the mannerisms that I never paid attention to before. And so I key into those things. But ultimately, I really have to give a lot of credit to Tom Keegan. Because very early on in filming, he was like, one of the notes that he gave me, he goes, "You're doing the finger wag too much." And I realized that I was using this mannerism as a crutch, because Harrison Ford doesn't walk around going, "Okay, remember to be Harrison Ford." Indiana Jones doesn't walk around going, "Okay, remember to be Indiana Jones." He just is. And one day on set, very early on, Tom Keegan came to me and he said, "Just trust that it'll be there." And the second that I let go of trying to do an impression and just started focusing on where Indiana Jones is in this moment, I feel like that's when we started doing our best work.
Amazing. You kind of preempted. I was going to ask about the mocap side of it, which must add like a whole other element of challenge to it. What was it like being on set trying to embody this?
I mean, that's my kung fu. You know, I've been in this process with performance capture for a very long time, and I've watched how it's evolved and changed and grown. I've been able to see how so many different studios from the AAA to the III level all do it, and there's no silver bullet way to do performance capture. Everybody has a pipeline that works for them. What I can say is that the way that we did this game, the way that we shot this game, is unique and something that I feel, fingers crossed, becomes an industry standard, which is we brought in our own DOP, Kyle Klutz, who was there on stage when we were shooting and actually shooting our cameras on the day, because we needed this to have that classic Spielberg, Lucas cinematic aesthetic. And in order to do that, you have to have your cameras there represented as you're shooting it, to make sure the frame is right, to make sure that it has that feel, to give that beautiful wide anamorphic vibe to it. So that to me really helped make this feel like it's truly a movie that you're playing. But as far as inhabiting the role physically as an actor, it's what everybody wants. I love doing just purely voice when that's the only tool that's given to me to help convey my part of this character before it hands over to animation and everything else. But for me to be able to stand on a stage, act opposite of incredible performers like Mario's or Tony, that to me is like really the dream come true.
Nice. And we're kind of in this kind of pre-release stage of time at the moment. How would you say someone's on the fence? Oh, do I want to play this game? What's kind of the pitch you'd give them of, you got to have a look at this thing?
I mean, it sounds so easy, but just play it. This is something that, regardless of whether you've been an Indiana Jones fan or not, everybody knows that call to adventure. Everybody knows that feeling of discovering a mystery and wanting to understand what wonder there is in life and what is out there, what's the unexplained. And everybody knows what it feels like to go on a treasure hunt, no matter what that treasure is, whether it's an ancient relic or if it's love. Somebody understands what that feels like. And fortunately, our story has all of those things, right? This is something for, I know it sounds, again, cliche and trite, but this is truly something for everybody. Whether you came into this IP knowing everything there is to know about Indiana Jones or nothing, this is a story you can relate to, and it's a game that everyone's going to have fun playing.
Amazing. Are there particular bits you're excited for? Scenes you're excited for people to discover?
Yes, there's definitely parts of this game that I cannot wait for people to discover, starting from the very, very beginning. It's something that we've worked very hard over the last several years to make this feel, again, as most authentic as we possibly could. I'm just excited for people to experience the story. And literally from the start to the end, I can't wait for people to go on the adventure with us.
One thing that I personally find really interesting in the kind of the entertainment industry at the moment is kind of lines seem to be kind of blurring. A movie can become a game can become a film or a TV show. Having gone through the experience of seeing The Last of Us be adapted into live action, has that given you a different perspective on to something like this?
I think I always try to gain perspective after every project. we've seen this new trend as far as this game becoming adapted into something that's meant for a different screen, and we've also seen something that was on one screen now become a game. And I think that everyone, both at Machine Games and at Bethesda, look, we got to go to work every day making something that we've dreamt about doing since we were kids, all of us. To me, this is, again, like I said, I always want to have perspective. But to me, it's about, you can't just adapt something into a different medium. There's something about when you're on the stick that inherently there's a different connection and a different association you have with that character when you're just watching them. You can say, don't go in there. There's a difference when it's you that's actually going in there. So to me, it's about how closely can we blur those lines between that character and you, because it's your choices. It's you that's throwing the punch. It's you that's cracking the whip. It's you that's sliding, escaping barely with your life. So that to me is something that I, as a gamer, as someone who plays games, is always looking to be a part of making. That's all that I want to do, is I want to make a game that I want to play. And I love TV and film, and I love that cinematic passive experience too. I love being able to see someone's autistic directorial vision come to life on that screen. There's just something about having a controller in your hand and pushing that left stick and that character moves.
Definitely. It must have been like uniquely surreal for you when you were on the set of Last of Us, the TV version, having been there when it was first created, and then to see it in person. Was that uniquely weird?
Surreal is an understatement.
Yeah.
Every time that I have the opportunity to work on something, I'm like, okay, this could be the last one. And I don't take those opportunities for granted. But I have to make sure that I'm always staying focused on the task at hand, because if I start letting myself spin out and going, oh my gosh, what does this mean? I can get easily lost. And at the end of the day, whatever character I'm playing, they don't know that they're in a show. They don't know that they're in a game. They don't know that they're in a movie. They're in a moment that's really happening. And so that's where I got to stay focused.
And one other thing about Indiana Jones as a character,
sure.
One thing I find kind of interesting about him is there's an element to which he's reluctant to get involved in things, but also the second he sees the chance to go off on an adventure, it's like, no questions asked, we're going.
Yeah.
It's like, to what extent do you think he wants to have this crazy life of adventures, or he's kind of torn between his real life and
One of my favorite lines is in Last Crusade, where he and his father have just escaped from the German castle, and they're in the motorcycle, and Indy looks at his dad and he says, "This is an obsession, Dad. I never understood it." And to me, that was the foundational theme of the entire character in our story, is like, yes, you have. You do understand obsession because you are obsessed. That was the inheritance that your father gave you, was the obsession of adventure, the obsession of finding the treasure. And that's something that I feel was at the beating heart and the core of our story, is what does it feel like to become so obsessed with something that you'll go to the ends of the earth to find it? And then what happens when you actually do?
Amazing. And on that, there's this amazing line. So I played the demo of the game at the preview event.
Yeah.
There's this great line. He meets a character who's used to seeing him in like his professor garb, and he's like, "Oh, I'm not used to seeing you. I didn't recognize you without the suit." And he's like, "Well, I don't recognize myself when I'm in the suit." So is that interesting to play with that kind of like, because you're only in the professor mode at like kind of the start of it, but
I always feel like the beauty of that is that the one component to his wardrobe that's always consistent is the hat. And of course, the etymology of the hat we learn about and where that came from. That's his grounding to me, is the thing that's the through line, is that he's always on the adventure, either way, whether he's teaching, because you see the same obsession and the passion and the love for the history when he's talking about the Neolithic, era, or talking about where the Ark came from. Like, whenever he talks about the things that he loves, he lights up, and it doesn't matter. whether he's the professor wearing the tweed or he's the adventurer wearing the leather jacket. But I definitely think that, and we explore this theme a little bit. It's like archaeology is getting your hands dirty. It's actually being out in the field. It's not being in the classroom. So I definitely feel like, this supports his habit. Being a teacher supports his habit. But what he ultimately wants to do is he wants to be out digging in the sands of Africa to find the relic.